Hey guys, so this is Raymond. I just decided to shoot a quick video. It's been a while since I made one of these, I don't want to fall out of the practice. I'm experimenting a little bit with the lighting, so I'm using different kinds of lights right now. You have to forgive me. I'm not in any way, shape, or form like a professional cinematographer, so I'm not that great with the lighting. I did take one semester of cinematography back at university, so I kind of understand some of the basic principles. But in no way have I practiced it from then until now, right? So I borrowed a couple of my lights from my sister, who's a photographer, or who does photography as a hobby. So I'm playing around with this. So yeah, if you have any comments with how I look on camera, with the lighting, of course, not with how I look. Yeah, just put it in the comments, and that would be really, really helpful, guys. All right, so what I want to talk about today is being comfortable with violence. Okay, this is something that you have to deal with as a martial artist, especially in Filipino martial arts. When you're doing martial arts that uses weapons where you're dealing with or you're using damage multipliers, um, the level of injury ramps up dramatically. And this is not even in just the sport aspect, you have that. But when you get to the self defense aspect, the same thing is true, right? The level of injuries that you can deal to the people that you encounter or that you have conflict with goes really, really high, right? So, for example, if you're doing a primarily empty hand martial art, um, you will be hard pressed to kill a man with your bare fists. I mean, we've all heard some funky stories about martial artists killing people by just beating them up, but that's more the exception rather than the rule. It's not that easy to beat a person to death, right? Typically, when you hear stories of people who got beaten to death, it would be people who are naturally like physically weak to begin with, and they were beaten up by someone way stronger, or someone who had an existing injury that was aggravated by the beating, right? So it's a little bit hard to really deal with that. To deal lethal damage. Not that I'm saying that it's impossible, but it's really really hard. I mean, talk to people who've competed in martial arts. Just knocking someone out is pretty hard to do, right? Even people who have trained to knock other people out find it difficult to do, or it's not something that just automatically happens, right? So that's with empty hands. Now, when you introduce weapons, right, you start amping up the damage that you're doing, right? So you amp it up. Let's say, for example, from empty hands you go to sticks, right? The kinds of injuries that you can deal now go higher, right? But again, it's very difficult to kill a person with a stick, right? Unless you're using yeah, even if you're using a war club of some kind or fighting club of some kind, like the Cebuanos, they have their olisi, which is a very popular tool for some of the martial arts groups there. For those who don't know, an olisi is basically like it's like a wooden sword, except it's more tuned towards being a club, right? Like if you take a look at the Japanese bokken, right? It's a wooden sword designed to look like a sword, designed to simulate a sword in practice, right? And then you can just use it as a club to hit people, right? Now imagine that somebody taking a look at that and saying, "No, this is a piece of wood, and we want it to do more damage. So we're gonna do these little tweaks to make it an effective to turn it into an effective club." That's basically what the Olisi is, from what I gather, right? When you look at it, it's a piece of wood with a blade profile on it, almost like a blade-like handle. You'd have an octagonal or maybe an oval handle, um, and then you have a blade profile. But instead of having a pointy tip, right, it would have like a flat tip, right? Very popular in Cebu, in some of the martial arts groups there. Also, super popular in Palawan. The Palawan style, they don't call it an Olisi in Palawan, and I can't for the life of me remember what it is. But the Palawan clubs, they sell them as tourist souvenirs. The Palawan clubs are mean little things. It widens out. I should have them ready here. I didn't know I'm going to talk about them, but I do have a couple of examples of those. I might do a video on those clubs in the future. But anyway, so if you start moving into dealing damage with clubs, then you increase the likelihood of breaking bones, right? So any of you guys who have done competitions, especially when competition levels are very high, broken fingers are not unheard of, right? I think most of the Filipino martial artists that I've met, or most of the arnisadores I've met, have broken like a finger at least once in their competitive career, right? Even the ones who just started, well, especially those who started as kids, everybody had messed. Even I have messed up fingers. I have one that like I had I think with a hairline fracture in one of my hands here. Oh yeah, this is funny. Uh, this doesn't open up as quickly. Oh, oh, this is weirdest stuff. This is really evident now because the weather's turning and it's getting a little bit colder, and I'm getting old man stuff, and that's the thing for me. Oh, so weird. For those who speak Filipino, nakakangilo. It just doesn't feel right. Anyway, so you get injuries like that. Then when you ramp it up even higher and you're using blades, right? Knives, swords, that's where we're talking about lethal injury being dealt at very, very like small power levels. You're just taking out a little bit of power from your hands, and then you can do decapitating strikes, you can do dismembering strikes, or slashes or cuts. The stabs are almost effortless. So for people who haven't had the chance to, I really encourage a lot of FMA practitioners to do at least some test cutting. Like get your sword, go out there and cut a bunch of materials. Like everybody loves cutting water bottles. Those are great. Cut a leg. Buy a side of meat from the grocery store or something, or the palenque, and just cut at it, like have a go, and you'll get to experience how much effort it takes, or should I say how little effort it takes to dismember someone, right? Like cutting through bone, especially if you're dealing with fresh bone, something that's not yet cooked. Swords just cut through it like butter, especially good swords, right? So I really encourage you guys to try it out. So what I'm saying is once the damage levels so what I'm saying is once the damage levels go to that point, um, injury is almost a certainty. Death is not too far behind, right? Um, and that's the thing that I want to talk about. The possibility of injuring or killing not yourself or but your opponent. Um, the thing is, we always try to avoid the idea of killing other people, right? Which is a good thing. That means you're a normal human being. No human being wants to just injure people. No sane human being anyway, right? If you're a crazy psycho, man, you're having fun imagining that. And even people who think they're having fun, or they're imagining killing people, they're not really imagining killing people. What they're doing is they're visualizing fights, and they're enjoying visualizing the fight and beating someone, winning a fight. But no one is imagining the moment where you kill a person and you see that they're dead, and the life just goes out of their body. No one's imagining that part. You're just winning in your mind. It's like a video game, or it's like a cartoon or something, or like an anime, and you just punch the guy or you hit the guy and boom, I win, yay. um But there comes a point, and that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. That's all part of the creative imagination, of the warrior's imagination, for us practitioners. But after a certain point, a lot of us will have to go and, if you train long enough, you'll get to the point where you think about really of applying these techniques in a real situation, right? Um, Now I've heard some people say, this is the one of the weirdest things for me, and this is probably one of the things that prompted my video. Is that I've heard some people say that, imagine fighting someone, winning someone, overcoming adversity. Don't imagine killing someone, right? Right. So like the it's almost like, for me, it's almost like mental calisthenics. Like you're saying, oh yeah, I'm doing this technique. The way they imagine it, or the way their mind is doing the visualization, is, I'm doing this technique to overcome you, to overcome your technique, and to win, and in this situation. But I'm not doing it to kill you. The killing you is an unfortunate byproduct of the technique that I just did. Which for me is a funny thing to think about. Because when you get into an altercation, right, the last thing you want to do is freeze. And your chances of freezing, and this is like one of my favorite expressions. I may have said it in another video. The best thing you can do is the right thing. The next best thing you can do is the wrong thing. And the worst thing that you can do is do nothing. Right? I think that's Winston Churchill. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I really, really believe that. Like in a self defense situation, if you do the right thing, that's perfect, right? You did the right thing. Hey, you applied the right technique at the right time. You avoided injury to yourself, and you were able to control the situation. Fantastic, right? Then there's the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing. Um, that's another video, I think. But I want to talk about doing nothing, right? You don't want to do nothing, right? That's when you get injured. That's when people. That's when things really, really go wrong out of the thing. And what you want to do, the reason why I'm talking about this, the connection between freezing up and thinking about killing, or yeah, like killing someone or injuring someone, is that you have to have that conversation with yourself about the reality of what you're going to do to someone when you get into a fight. Um, like when you think about it, if I'm gonna get into a fight and I draw a knife, I have no illusions that someone's gonna die, right? It's the other guy or me, right? That's what happens when you draw a knife. You have to be comfortable with that thought, right? When you draw a sword on someone, not just for practice, guys. When you draw a sword on someone, you draw a knife on someone, someone's gonna die. And I have that same mentality. If someone draws a knife on you, or someone draws a sword on you, death is on the table, right? It's in the cards. It's gonna happen, or it's a very likely thing to happen. Um, and that's the thing, right? You have to have this conversation with yourself. At what point do I draw the knife? Now, other people drawing a weapon on you, you have less control of that, right? But it's almost the same idea. At what point do I draw a knife, right? Let's focus on that idea first. At what point do I draw a knife? So again, in my mind, if I draw a knife on someone, it means this is life and death. Someone's going down. Um, so what I'm careful with is not how I think at the moment, like, oh, I don't really want to injure you. I'm just going to detain you. Again, this is one of the weirdest things for me. Restraining movements with a knife. I mean, it can work. Like, I've seen the techniques. Yeah, you can probably pull it off. But it's a really weird thing because when you draw a knife, it escalates the fight, right? If the person sees you draw a knife, he doesn't think, oh, he's going to restrain me with that knife. No, the other guy goes, he's going to stab me with that knife. It escalates the situation, right? And it's weird. So if you're restraining someone with a knife, like, oh, right. I'm gonna escalate the situation so I can de-escalate it. I don't know. It's a weird progression for me. But that's probably a topic for another video. Um, but anyway, so right when you draw a knife, it escalates the situation. Right, it's gonna go life and death. Right. So you have to have this conversation with yourself to talk about at what situations will I draw a knife. Right. You have to you have to be very clear with yourself about that. So like let's say for example, I know a lot of people like now in in modern society, everyone is, I would say, self-centered. And some people don't see that as a bad thing, and it's not necessarily a bad thing in this case, where when people feel that if their person is not under threat, they will not get involved or they will not get into a physical altercation, which is a reasonable idea, right? Like let's say for example, if you get into a fender bender, cars hit each other, people, it's very good to say that, hey, I'm not going to draw a knife at this point, right? This isn't a knife drawing situation. This is just something that happened, cars are cars, you can pay for that. This is not life and death. Not gonna draw a knife on this kind of situation. Some people extend that even further. Like let's say for example, if they see a crime being committed, like an assault or something, in their minds they say, and this is again, this is when rubber meets the road kind of thing. Um, you have you have to have talked to yourself beforehand to say that yes, if I see a person being attacked, I am going to help, and I will draw a weapon in order to help in the situation. Now, that's a decision that you have to make cold, right? You have to make that decision right now when nothing is on the line yet, right? If you say, oh, at this point, I will draw a knife. So that when that situation happens and things get hot, things get heated, you can trust yourself to think, oh, I've thought this through. I am definitely drawing a knife, right? But for some people, if again, when I talked earlier about people being self-centered, for them, if you see an attack happening and it's not against your person, and you don't know any of these people, some people say just don't draw a knife, don't do anything. Some people would even suggest actively move away, right? And it kind of makes sense. If you are not equipped and trained to deal with these situations, it's best to walk away, maybe, right? Because you might just be adding another victim to that situation if you try to get involved, right? So makes sense, right? But again, this is up to each individual person to have this conversation with yourself. Is this the point where I do this, right? So, some people would say, oh, I would only draw a weapon when me or my family is in mortal danger. Well and good principle, right? But then you have to define what does mortal danger mean, right? You have to you have to play out these scenarios in your head and to be very, very clear when you are going to be comfortable drawing a knife, right? Because it's happened to me before. Like I have this very clear line where I told myself anything less than this, I'm not drawing a knife, right? And like like the example I gave before, a little fender bender or something like that. I've had people like challenge me to a fight in the middle of the road. This is really weird. Um, and at the moment, you get that. You get that. You're a martial artist, so you have that warrior mindset a little bit, right? I don't care at what point you are in your martial career. You may be a beginner, you may be advanced, or whatever. You didn't get involved in martial arts without having that kind of warrior mindset, right? So when there's this person that's like becoming really offensive, right? Very offensive in his posture and his voice and everything. And I told myself, look, this isn't we've. It's like you talk to yourself, right? we've talked about this before. This is not one of those situations where you draw a knife, right? And I was really, really surprised that this guy really wants to have a fight with me. Um, because, I'm a big guy, especially for here in the Philippines. I'm around 280 pounds. Right? Well, now I'm 280 pounds. At the time, I was probably closer to 240, 230, which is my actual fighting weight. I'm really comfortable fighting at around 220 is my best weight. I really fight really well at 220. Anyway, so this guy was just challenging me to a fist fight, and at that moment, I was carrying a knife, and I knew that if this altercation proceeds, the knife might get drawn, and this isn't one of those situations where it's worth it to kill a person, right? So I backed down. I swallowed my pride and then just backed down, right? And the reason why I could do that clearly, I had that clear decision making was I've talked to myself beforehand. I've played that scenario out. Like, oh, if this happens, never ever draw a knife, right? Or I will only draw a knife in so and so scenarios, right? So that's the thing. And it's different from person to person. Like I mentioned, it depends on your martial arts journey. If you're a beginner and you don't have any training, and or you've only had what 1 or 2 years of training, you haven't really been competing yet. um, you know One of the things that I would tell people, if a fight is still a big blur to you, like if you get into a competition and you fight and it's a big blur, you don't know what happened in the competition, you're still not at that conscious proficiency yet, right? So that's a good note for me. But anyway, you could be at that beginner level, you could be at the middle level, intermediate level. You've been doing this for a while now. You're confident with your techniques. You've trained and tested your techniques against other practitioners. Or you could be advanced level. You could be teaching people or whatever. Depending on where you are in your martial arts journey, you'll probably have a different set of rules on when you're going to get involved, when you're going to get physical, when you're going to draw your weapon, right? You have to be clear about that. Even with, and you want to be as detailed as possible when you do that kind of thing. Other scenarios that you can think about: home invasions, right? You have to play about it, or play with it in your head, right? At what point do you draw a weapon in a home invasion, right? Like for me personally, like I don't know about you guys, and everyone has a different thing. The moment I suspect someone is within my property, you should draw your sword already, right? And not in an offensive way, like I'm gonna kill all of you, right? You just draw your sword, right? Just so you're ready, because you're in your property and you suspect someone's there. Um, so you draw your sword. So if you see someone, you have to get it in your mind that you are going to stab this person. You settle that with your mind already. Settle that with yourself. Be at peace with that choice. Because if you're not comfortable with killing someone in that scenario, then maybe you shouldn't be drawing a weapon, right? Maybe you should be doing something else. Um, Maybe you should use a different weapon, like something less lethal than a sword, right? Something less lethal than a knife. If you don't want to kill someone, just use a pocket stick, something like that. Why? Because at least now you're training more realistically, right? You're training for a weapon that you're comfortable to use against another human being, right? So again, in a home invasion, for me, I would draw my sword the moment I suspect someone's there, get myself into a ready position, investigate, and if there's nothing there, then thank God, right? Because all of these things that I'm sharing is rooted in an experience that I had before, right? Like we had a home in not exactly a home invasion, but a break-in situation years ago, um, and I was surprised at how slow I reacted. Like I was super ready for that kind of stuff, but I wasn't, right? And part of it, again, is the decision making process. I wasn't clear with myself that, oh, when this happens, I draw my knife, or at this point, I draw my sword now. I was still thinking, oh, should I get my sword? Is this the time to get my sword? Right? Maybe it's something else. I don't know, right? Uh, so again, it's all about the decision making process, and we're all Filipino martial artists, or practitioners of Filipino martial arts, and you should be at peace with that, with the fact that what you're doing is something very lethal, something very dangerous. So for me, it's almost like that shock and awe mentality of the military. Like you don't engage, but when you engage with overwhelming strength and overwhelming lethality, so that it neutralizes your opponent or kills your opponent as quickly as possible. And then that's what for me is the thing. Only engage when you're ready to really inflict something lethal against your fellow human being, and have that conversation with yourself. Talk to yourself, like at what point are you comfortable with injuring or maybe even killing someone, right? And that's just the reality of martial arts, right? So I've been talking about this long enough, guys. There's enough nuggets there. I find that I'm repeating myself quite a bit. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, yeah, go ahead, shoot me a message. If you have any comments or responses, just do whatever, reach me. All right. So have a nice day, guys, and maybe I'll talk to you some other time.